Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Selby. I'm with Service to School and thrilled to have you join us this evening. You're going to have an opportunity to not make the mistake I made as an undergraduate student. Like many of us, I didn't visit the Career Services office until my senior year, and I needed some help, and I needed it right away with my resume. Had I engaged with Career Services early on, there are quite a few things that I would have done differently, especially in preparation for both grad school and for my future career. Just wasn't aware of the resources, but we're going to correct that this evening. We're joined by Teresa Olsen. Teresa is the Associate Vice President for Career Initiatives at Colgate University, and she's got some great information to share. And if you're not visiting your Career Services office, soon after you arrive on campus, you will have made the same mistake I did as well. And also, I want to emphasize, because a lot of you are applying for school for 2022, you need to put career services on the list of factors as you're deciding what schools to apply to and eventually what school that you're going to attend. We think about academics, we think about location, we think about size, but we don't often think about career services. So make sure you're asking questions about the resources that are provided to the students, because that's going to be paramount to a great experience for you. So without further ado, Teresa, glad to turn it over to you, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Jim. And I'm joined by my colleague, Gary Ross, who leads our admission and financial aid division here at Colgate. He is as good as it gets. So we are thrilled to be able to share some information about Colgate, to welcome you to the process of learning more about our institution. But as Jim mentioned, today's program is also to help you think through what are some of the questions that you could and should be asking as you're evaluating colleges and universities as you make your decision. So before we begin, I just want to take just a quick moment and just thank you very much for your service. I recognize, and Jim has helped me understand a little bit more about the program for Service to School. And certainly this program is impressive, but so are you. And really appreciate everything that you're doing to support our country and to protect our country. So without further ado, as we get started, let me share my screen here. Here we go. All right. And Jim, can you just confirm that you can see that okay?
Yes, we can. We're good.
Wonderful. So today we're going to speak a little bit about career services. I am going to make this a lot about Colgate, because it would be our pleasure for you to seriously consider us as a potential place that you might think through college. But what we're really going to get into is, what is career services now? And for many of our students, as they come into Colgate, they honestly don't have much context of what a career services office is, what we do, and the ways in which we can support you as you're looking at life while you're a student, but also thinking about life after Colgate. So I want to start by talking a little bit about how to begin. And the way that we think about career development and career services is that we know that if you are coming to an institution such as Colgate, you are an incredibly capable candidate. You are somebody who has worked extremely hard, has been impressive in many, many aspects of your life, and you are ready to be able to tackle pretty much anything that we put in front of you. We have a lot of faith in our mission colleagues to vet candidates very, very clearly and very well. And so for us, it's not necessarily a question of, can you be professionally successful? Really, it's a question of, in what ways are we going to help you find your best fit, your best fit to be professionally successful? What are the ways that we can help you think about yourself and the world around you, to think through what is the best professional option for you? How can we help you move forward in that process? And how can we help you pursue that outcome as well too? When I think about the type of students that we have here, you are academically very, very capable. In many other ways in your life, you've been successful. However, most of the students who come to a liberal arts college, or frankly come to any college, have only seen a very small portion of the world, because of the fact that you have not necessarily had to work through different industries quite yet. Now, with the group that we're talking about today, with your military service, certainly you have a major advantage of having some very, very significant life experiences, and we appreciate that and respect that. But we also want to give you a chance to go out and to try a little bit more before you have to come down to the type of career that you will be leaving college to do, or the graduate program, of course, as well too. So when we think about a career development program for you, we really start with the basics, and we start thinking through, how can we very beginning run you through a process of learning a little bit about yourself and help us get to know you. At Colgate, our best work is done individually, one-on-one with students. We have the privilege of having just over 3,000 students on campus, which means that we can really get to know students one-on-one and to be able to guide and to coach you where you need to go. And working through this process is going to feel very different than potentially what your military career has felt like. Jim, again, has been wonderful to help me put my head around this a little bit, in that for the most part, what you have been experiencing during your service is pretty linear. And it's been in a situation where you know what your mission is, you know what your activities are for the day, you know how to achieve them, and you're going to follow with your group to do that. When you think about your choices in college and think about your choices in thinking professionally what you want to do, it's not as prescribed. It's not going to be as clear of a pathway forward. So that's where it's so important to work with people such as my team to work on what should your steps be? How do you take them? What are the things that you should be thinking about right now? How do you tackle them? When do you tackle them? With what intensity do you tackle them? And that's the kind of coaching that my team will do in here. So what I have up here on the slide is indicative of our 4-year career development plan. We know that students need a little bit more guidance, and you don't always know what you don't know. So what we have done is we've put together a 4-year career development plan through which we will bring you step by step by step in the process. You are the most important person in this process, so we have built the entire process around you. And we start from, again, storytelling. Who are you? What are the things that you're great at? What are the things that are important to you? What are the identities that you bring, including your veteran status by the point that you will be in college as well too? And then how do we bring you through a process of exploring what kinds of career options are really going to be a good fit for your skills and your interest and the things that you want to keep dear and near to your heart in here as we move forward. From that standpoint, we're going to move you forward to help you learn how to apply to opportunities, to try them out. And we will work with you on things such as writing resumes and interviewing skills and networking skills. And we're going to move forward to create a very strategic plan that you can follow step by step by step, again, with a lot of support from those career advisors as we move forward. Towards the end of the plan, you'll see that we get closer into that interviewing phase, analyzing opportunities, deciding what your best fit is, and then eventually transitioning on through college. So with that really close one-on-one attention that we're going to work with you on, make sure that you are well taken care of, make sure that you're nudged in good directions, have a chance to explore things that you may have never heard about before. What we find with students is by the time that you are a senior in college, you will have had enough moment to think about yourself and the world around you and get to know that really well to make an informed decision and to be able to leave Colgate or leave whatever school you're going to be finding yourself at, knowing what path is next for you and knowing that that path is going to be a good first step for you. Now, you notice that I didn't say you're going to retire from that path. We know that many transitions and many influences are going to come into play for you in a professional zone, but we're really thinking about launching you in that great first step to begin with. The second piece of that is that we are going to work really intensely through a process with you for those 4 years to give you a chance to try it out. Because as you all know, it's really different reading about something, talking to other people about that same piece, and then actually being boots on the ground and giving it a shot. So we think the same way about our experience as well too. You can read and learn about a career, you can talk to somebody about that same career, but you're really not going to know whether or not it's a fit until you have a minute to try it. And so I'll talk in just a little bit as we go through the presentation about the support that we'll give you there. And then the third piece is we need you to get some practice at this process, because I don't want you hitting that senior year, as Jim mentioned, coming to a point of crisis or coming to a moment of extreme stress, where now you have to fit all that work from those 4 years into one, and you're really trying to force it through. Unfortunately, as we are working with students, it's not always on whatever timeline it needs to be. There are industry triggers and standards and things along those lines that we need to be aware of, so that when those opportunities come up, you are ready at the moment where those opportunities are going to activate for you too. So the bottom line with all of this is that we have been really dialed in, very, very thoughtful about how to take students through those 4 years, help them get to where they need to go by being very personalized, and also to be able to put on your radar when things are going to come up, how we're going to take care of them together, how we're going to make sure that you are asking the right questions and that you're moving through this process in a way that feels very, very supported by this community of people. So on that note, how do we do this? As I said, our best work is done when we really work one-on-one with students, and we love this work. It is the bread and butter of what we do. At Colgate, we have 6 professional staff advisors. Every single one of them is a wonderful person. However, you may decide that there is a person with whom you just click, and that makes sense for you to work with that person. Once our students go from a process through which you say, you know what, I have thought a little bit about what types of things I'm curious about. You may transition working with a certain single advisor to a different advisor because that advisor to whom you are transitioning has a specific industry insight that would be helpful for you. And so, for example, if you decide that technology is something that is going to be a career that you would like to follow or at least to explore, I will want you working with James Reed, our STEM advisor, to work out that process. The kind of support that James is going to be able to give you is certainly to have conversations about what kinds of options are out there in the technology world. But he's also going to be very attuned and aware of when do industries hire, what kinds of things are they looking for from candidates, what kind of alumni connections do we have in these processes, and who are our recruiters with whom we are working. And that kind of level of coaching and expertise is going to be so helpful for you as we're moving along. So we're taking the pressure off of students to have to know all these pieces, and we can guide you along in that process. The photo on the right that I have here is, this is what advising looks like. So you are going to be sitting one-on-one, really working through your questions and your ideas and getting that very individualized. The next piece that I mentioned, this is a montage of a whole lot of photos just to give you a sense of the ways in which we want students to have a chance to explore. So as I mentioned, that advising piece is important, but activating and going and trying something out is really where you get a sense as to whether or not something's going to be a fit for you. So as we think about helping students out, especially in those first 2 years, one of the ways that we do that is we rely very heavily on our alumni network to help our students work through that process. We have 35,000 approximately living alumni in the world, and they are literally in every crack and crevice. They do amazing work, and anything that you probably can think of, we probably have somebody doing that as well too. So it's really our pleasure in Career Services to be able to facilitate those conversations and those connections between our students and our alumni out there. So just to give you a sense of what this might look like for you. In the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a group of students with laptops up on tables. This is in Benton Hall. This is our home here in Career Services. So you might see a panel of alumni coming back that we have brought back through, and we will have these industry panels where we've said to students, for example, if you get excited about learning about public health, come down and hear from all these different alumni about the different ways that they think about public health and what their jobs are in there too. These are students who are exploring in their second year, first year, third year, who are looking at this career field and learning more about it to evaluate whether or not it's a fit. And here too. Coming counterclockwise up to 12 o'clock here as we move forward, the upper right-hand corner is our Sophomores Connections event. So this is a huge career conference that we do right before second semester begins for our sophomores. It's nationally recognized. And this program is all built off of career panels and networking opportunities. This happens to be our networking dinner in here too, where we brought alumni back and have a moment for students to really have these great small group conversations. Again, nice moments to connect and to build your network of people. The photos that you will see up in the middle here too, IBM, and then you'll see kind of a judicial setting in there too. These are from our Day in the Life program, where we have a job shadow program. It's actually moved to junior year because that's how we are helping students keep moving through that process, where we will set you up where you can go and spend a day or 2 days with an alumnus or an alumna in their place of work, again, to give it a shot. And then as you move forward, you'll see Rob Stone, one of our alums, down in the lower left-hand corner at Fox Sports, and in the upper left-hand corner, one of our medical professional alumni as well too. So again, just great examples of where our alumni are very welcoming to have students come through. From an exploratory basis, again, it gives you a great chance to have a moment to just ask questions of somebody who's in that field and decide whether or not that's interesting to you. From a strategy perspective, it's an important moment for you to be welcomed into our Colgate family, and then for the members of our Colgate family to help guide and help you approach how you think about job applications, internship applications, graduate schools, professional schools such as medical schools, law schools, engineering. And not only can they give you their wonderful wisdom and their time, but oftentimes they're influential in those processes to help you get recognized or to make sure that you have that extra leg up over other candidates as well too. So alumni networking is really a huge part of our culture here at Colgate. We have so many alumni who are willing to give back and who are very gracious with their time to do so. Moving ahead, as I mentioned, getting out there and trying it is really important. And one of the pieces that our office will do, and that I would say you want to think about evaluating a great career center, is what kind of support they're going to have for you for summer internships or summer research projects. Really, the goal for you would be to have 2 professional experiences on your resume by the time that you hit your senior year. Typically what that looks like is after your sophomore year and after your junior year in those summertime. You all have a benefit of having your military service, which is a huge asset and a really wonderful thing to be able to speak about, and is most decidedly a very significant professional experience. So you're already ahead of the game. So on top of your military experience, thinking about compounding that with that sophomore internship and that junior internship, if you're ready, even an internship after your first year. And again, the point of these is to go out and to gain that industry-based experience, build your skills, build your network, build your opportunity to check out a field. Each one of these pictures represents a different context, but what I wanted to show you were some examples of our summer funding program. So for many students, they are looking at internships that are in industries that typically pay interns. However, for many of our other students, they are going after internships that are either unpaid or underpaid, which may mean that they are not providing the type of compensation that would allow you to get through the living expenses that you might need. Our office has been very, very fortunate over the last several years to be able to give grants for students pursuing these unpaid or underpaid opportunities. And just for a little bit of context, we've been given out $2.8 million in grants in the last 5 years. That number is actually a little bit lower than normal because COVID had a lot of virtual internships, so the living expenses were slightly lower, as you might imagine. But it's a really, really, really important piece of what we do and how we support all students in here. I also included $820,000 in undergraduate research. Colgate has an extraordinarily strong undergraduate research program, and this can be very, very beneficial for all students, but in particular those who are going towards science-oriented careers, because as you may know, a research experience is going to be one of those gateway moments into graduate school. And the wonderful benefit of Colgate is that we are almost singularly an undergraduate institution. So although we have a very, very small, and when I say small, I mean less than what you can count on one hand, amount of graduate students who come through our university on a yearly basis, our full-time faculty members are our teaching faculty. They are the ones who are in the labs running the first-year seminars with our students and all the way up through those 4 years. So when I talk about undergraduate research, you're not going to be researching under a PhD level candidate or a master's candidate. You are going to be working right alongside with those full-time faculty members, and it is an excellent experience. One note on this slide that I did want to mention, the gentleman who's in front of the Deloitte sign is actually a Marine right now, Lucas Cooper, who graduated just a couple of years ago. So it's nice to see those connections being made. But Lucas did OCS while he was a student here, men's lacrosse program as well too. And so we have a lot of wonderful ties to the military in some really neat ways as well. So those are internship grants. Coming forward and moving ahead, you may be curious about the ways in which a college or university also has connections to employers. So I broke all PowerPoint rules and I put up a slide that has an abundance of information. This is just to give you a sampling of the types of employers that come into our formal recruiting program. Colleges and universities, often through their career services offices, will have employers that will work to recruit for internships and entry-level jobs. Entry-level jobs are those that you would get coming out of college. And what you will see from this list is that you're going to see representatives across all kinds of different industries, representatives across all kinds of different geographies. And this is, again, just a sample. Typically, we have about 200 formal recruiting partners that work with us on a yearly basis. So it's a place that we spend a lot of time and energy to carve those pathways forward and to make it much simpler for our students to be able to be included and employed at these organizations. Most of the time, the big hot button question is, okay, what happens at the other end of Colgate? So what happens coming out of school, and how do my chances look in terms of being able to leverage this 4-year wonderful liberal arts degree into opportunities to be employed and to be admitted into graduate programs? So I always try to share a little bit about what we call our first destination outcomes. Typically with career centers, they are looking at what happens with postgraduate outcomes approximately 6 to 9 months post-graduation, which is why the class of 2020 is the most recent data that I am showing you here. We are almost to the place of asking our 2021s and collecting all that information. But a couple of numbers that you want to pay attention to as you were looking at these statistics from all kinds of institutions that you might be looking at for admission. The first is actually that knowledge rate number. So as you can see, for the class of 2020, we were at 89.8%, so approximately 90% of the class. What that number is, the knowledge rate is the percentage of the class that a university knows about in terms of what their outcome has been. Some schools are going to give you outcomes that are not necessarily going to be explicit about that knowledge rate. That's a question that you want to ask. What you will notice from our first destinations data And again, I give you a 5-year spread because a lot of things happen within 5 years' time. But what you'll notice is somewhere between the 95 to 98% of that knowledge rate of students have landed into either full-time employment, graduate school, and think broadly about that. So that would include our professional schools, such as medical school, law schools, engineering schools, architecture programs, things along those lines too. Full-time volunteer service could be things like the Peace Corps or Teach for America. Fellowships includes national and international fellowships and scholarships. We do have some folks who will go on to military service following Colgate, and also to begin their own business, which is what that other component may include in there as well too. And a couple pieces that I'll just mention as we go through in here too. Oftentimes I'll hear questions about law schools and medical school admission rates and where we sit in context to that. So I put some stats up here on the slide, but you will see that our averages for getting our students through an admission process and supporting them in that is much, much higher on both the medical and the law school lenses than the national averages. We very much believe in transparency here at Colgate, especially when it comes to outcomes data, because this should be an evaluative criteria that you are using to look at schools. I put a link down at the bottom that you are very welcome to click into at your leisure as well too. And all of our first destinations outcomes data is up on our website for the last 6 years. And you can go in and play with the Tableau dashboards that are in there, and you are very, very welcome to search by major, by graduate school, by employer, by industry, just so you get a really good sense of where our students have gone in the past. It's only the first step. There are many, many wonderful career transitions that our alumni do, and wonderful places that they find themselves. But this will give you a little bit of a sense of how students leverage that Colgate degree to great things. And again, thinking a little bit about where our students land, I just pulled the US map, although I can tell you that our students go in a lot of international space, which is wonderful. But again, just so you have a sense, we are not just clustered in the Northeast, we are all over the US and all over various parts of the world as well. I'll leave you, and I know we probably have some questions that we want to get to. So I know I've thrown a lot at you in the last couple of minutes in here too. But again, our job is to make sure that you are well taken care of as people and as wonderful people who have very, very unique questions. And so as we move forward and as we talk today, happy to answer any questions that pop up. But as you are looking at this process and thinking this through, it would truly be our pleasure to answer any questions that you personally have. So I've put my contact information and Gary's up here. And I know that these slides will be circulated out as well too. You're very, very welcome to reach out at any point. Please come and ask your unique questions, the things that will help you evaluate and to make a good decision for yourself. But we'd be delighted for you to look at Colgate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Teresa. For those of you on the call with us, if you have a question, you could either drop it into the chat room. You can raise your hand and I will unmute your mic. But I do have some questions that have come through, Teresa. One is, so we had talked earlier about the importance of learning more about career services as you're going through the process of determining what colleges you may apply to and the one you may ultimately attend. What are some of the questions that you would advise people to ask as they're doing the research to determine, you know, what resources does a particular school's career services provide?
Sure, that's an excellent question. Thank you to whomever submitted that. I think it really depends on where you're starting, to be perfectly honest. So if you are a candidate or a prospective student who's coming in and saying, you know what, I've had this really robust military experience and that was wonderful, but I'm not really sure professionally what I want to do, I think that should drive some of your questions. So I would ask that career center, how do you work with students who are undecided or who may be still exploring career options? What kind of support exists there? If you're coming in and you have a better sense of what it is that you want to check out and what you may want to pursue professionally, I think you can get a little bit more specific to say, if I'm interested in these things, tell me about the resources that specifically tie to help somebody move forward and to be connected to employers in that pathway. Those are very, very fair questions to ask. And both of those pieces, those starting points are really normal for students to come in. So please know that most students, when they're coming through, again, don't have a specific career field in mind. It's one of those pieces that we want you to have a moment to explore before you make a decision. Another question that I think would be very, very helpful for you to know is what are the very specific ways that you are connected to alumni, and give some examples of what that might look like. So as I mentioned, we're very, very intentional to wrap alumni in. there's a strategy and a tactic to that, right? And so not only is it a great learning experience to learn from somebody who has that kind of wisdom and can share that firsthand perspective, but there's also influence that can happen there. And so as students engage with alumni, they are impressive, and that allows that alum to feel very good about helping support their applications, advocating for them, connecting in and making sure that they're making introductions. And so that alumni networking piece, hugely important as you move forward. And then I think the other really important and pivotal question, and I'm a little bit biased on this, Jim, but I think in a place that we do really well, is how much individual support might a student be able to expect from that career services office. And there are many ways that career services offices work with students. Again, we have the privilege of having a relatively small campus, so we can be very individual and personalized. In my humble opinion, I think that that's a really nice way to be guided through. But other universities that have much larger populations, the ratio of students to career services professional is very different. So that's going to feel very, very different to students. So it depends on what the student needs, to be perfectly honest. And I think as you're moving forward, those are good questions to start with. And then certainly as you look at their website and do a little bit of research, you can learn more and you can ask the questions that are very specific to your interest and your need.
Thank you, Teresa. Gary, did you see the question from Fazane in the chat box by chance?
I did, Jim. I was just typing a response, but it would be, I think, more efficient if I responded over the Zoom call. And Fazane, thanks for that question. Let me take the back part of that question first. I think it's really important to know that once you're admitted to Colgate, whether it's as a first-year student or a transfer student, you are able, from the point of your enrollment, to utilize all resources at Colgate University. And one of the things that Teresa Olsen and her team have done so very well at Colgate, among many, is they've sent out a very clear message. And it fits right in with the theme that Jim Selby was speaking to at the start of this Zoom call. And that is that you are welcome to take advantage of the career services resources as soon as you are on the Colgate campus, whether it's as a first year, whether it's as a transfer, no matter when it happens to be. And my strongest recommendation is whether it's in career services or off-campus study opportunities or anything else that Colgate has to offer, that students don't wait, that they immediately begin to take advantage of all resources at Colgate as soon as they're on our campus. Now, to answer the first part of that question about relinquishing credits as a transfer student, what happens is when we get a transfer application, we evaluate it in admission, and then we send that transcript for all those students that we have designated as competitive for admission. And those transcripts go to our registrar's office. The registrar's office determines how many credits can be brought into Colgate. And in some instances, it's quite a few credits. In other instances, if the classes were not compatible with the Colgate curriculum, those classes will not be approved for a credit. We would not want you to give up any credits that are viable towards your Colgate degree, in the same way that we would not want you to be able to count, you or any other student, to be able to count credits that have no relevance to your Colgate degree. So each transcript is evaluated individually, each student at the point of admission. When you find out you were admitted to Colgate, you find out at the exact same moment how many courses will be accepted for credit off of your existing transcripts. And if there are some that we view worthy of credit, and typically there are, we would certainly want you to keep those credits. But again, I want to emphasize you would still be eligible from the point that you enroll to utilize all resources at Colgate. So thanks, that's a really great question.
Gary, while I have you on the line, I have another admissions question. Does Colgate admit transfer applicants for spring admissions? And if so, when is the application deadline for spring 2022?
Yes, we do. And in fact, we have been able to admit in the past some veterans for mid-year enrollment, and the deadline for that application is November 1st. If anyone has any questions, if there's a problem making that November 1st deadline, we might be able to give you a week or so extension, but I would want you to write me ahead of time. And right up on the screen is my email address, and I'd ask that you contact me so that we can make a note in your file.
Teresa, back to you. And this is on the transfer pathway as well. How viable is it for a transfer student who's coming in at the junior level to complete those 2 professional experiences that you've mentioned before they graduate?
Yeah, great question. So it depends on the student, to be perfectly honest. And I think, part of what I would say is, as we see transfer students coming through, and admission does such a nice job on this with what we do here, we have a pathway where there's a handoff between the admission folks and folks on our student affairs team called the administrative dean. So we actually have a single dean who really oversees that transfer student onboarding process, if you will. And what they do is they give us a heads up and they say, hey, Career Services, we have X number of students coming through. It's really our pleasure to be able to reach out and welcome those students. And again, this kind of goes with the personal touch that you're going to get from Colgate, where we'll say, look, we know that you're coming in and your experience might look different than other juniors, but there's value in that. And one of the things that I find with our transfer students is that they are really coming with a very high level of maturity, because they have had a moment where they have made a decision that they want to come to Colgate and they want to be very intentional about coming to Colgate. And so that's a really great place to start. For some of our transfer students, they may have already had experiences in internships. They may have had student leader experiences, which are really robust and solid. For those of you who are coming on this call, you will have had your military experience. So what we think about is we take a look and we get to know those students first and foremost. And then we do want to get them wrapped right into those resources to think about that junior summer. For some students who have not yet had a moment to have a professional work experience or a professional internship, we actually slow them down, because usually those students have had something else going on that has been really meaningful, such as full-time employment or a very solid moment to give back financially to their families through the employment that they have done. So there's a lot of depth in there too. But one of the things that you will find about Colgate, excuse me, is that certainly we can help you think about that summer experience, and that will be a target for us. However, there's so many ways that students can get involved here on campus and to demonstrate their leadership skills and to also build their technical skills that they may need. So part of the conversation that we would have with a student who may not have had access to trying out internships or other things before they transfer is to really think about, how do we plug them into the campus environment here? So one of the things that you might see is that offices such as ours actually take interns. Gary's office does the same thing too. So it may not be that all of your professional experiences happen over the summer. We have several students who have to really make money and contribute that money to their college education or back to their families. So an unpaid experience over the summer may not be as easy of an option. Even with a grant, that might be harder. So those are students that may be stepping forward in other leadership ways, and there's a great story to tell there as well too. So I think it really depends on the student, and we're going to work one-on-one to make sure that that student has the best path forward to be as competitive as possible going after those postgraduate opportunities.
Right. Another question. Are Colgate students afforded the opportunity for study abroad? And if so, is that coordinated through Career Services or through another office?
Yeah, great question. We actually have an office of off-campus study, and those are opportunities to study internationally as well as sometimes domestically as well. There are 2 types of ways that students typically would go in an academic way off campus to study. One of them is to take a semester or a year and to be able to go to a different location and enroll with either a Colgate study group, which means that you're taking a faculty member and a group of Colgate students with you, or you might enroll at another university that is on our approved list. And by the way, that would allow you to bring your financial aid with you, which is a really pivotal part for many of our students too. So that's one way. The second way is through something we call an extended study or an SRS. Two different kind of ideas, but in the same vein, where you are working alongside a faculty member during an actual course that you're enrolled in during your semester. So one of your normal courses. And then that course has a component where there's a travel moment there that, again, you're traveling with that faculty member in your classroom setting to go out and to have some applied learning. So for example, some of our students have done extended study programs down to Ecuador where they're studying geology and they're going to spend some time on volcanoes and understand what that looks like. Our sociology students have gone to China and looked at human rights. Some of our folks in the educational studies folks have gone to South Africa and studied disparities in the educational system there. So it's a really nice way to kind of connect the dots, both theoretically and practically, to what students are studying. From our end, if students are either choosing not to go in an academic way, you can also think about an internship overseas. And we actually have some of our summer grants that are specifically tied to supporting students doing international experiences there too.
Okay, so the question goes to preparing to apply to graduate school or professional school.
Yeah.
We had talked about, go to career services early and often. How does that, I mean, and I think we were focused as much on the employment aspect of that and preparing for careers, but
Yeah.
could you talk a little bit about, strategies to consider and how to best engage career service if you know that afterwards you're going to a graduate program or going to be applying to a professional school?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That's an awesome question too. I think it actually starts in the same place, to be perfectly honest. So I think when we think about students who are really aiming for graduate schools or professional schools, we still want you to go through that initial process. So the starting place begins with who are you, what's interesting to you, what are the things that are kind of on your radar. How can we help you really dig into the field that you're excited about? But then that pathway is starting to work through what are the types of experiences that we can help you accrue either on campus through involvement or through working with a faculty member, or off campus like an internship, where all of those pieces are going to look really, really, really desirable to an academic program, to a master's program, to a PhD level program, or to med schools or law schools or engineering schools. And so it's going to be a collaboration to work through that process with a faculty member who is really in your discipline and who may very well know the landscape of the academic faculty that you might be looking at in a graduate education. But our office is going to be complementary to that to really help a student work through that process of gaining that experience that, again, is going to demonstrate your maturity and your drive and also your focus of what you want to study in there too. Practically speaking, what we will do with students as they get ready to apply is that we'll have a lot of conversations with them to help them evaluate and to weigh out when is the best time to go after graduate education. It might be that the student is absolutely ready coming straight out of college and doing a direct admit into a graduate program, but a student might also say, you know what, I need a little bit of time to work, or the type of programs that I want to go after, they're actually going to value more work experience after college, and that will make me a better candidate. There's a lot of factors to weigh in there as well too. And so we will have a lot of those conversations and coach students through that process when they are ready to apply, whether that's while they're a student or while they're an alum, and we will be free for life. So please think about that. You don't get cut off at graduation. We want to continue to work with you as alumni. That we will work through the actual application. So how do you prepare for standardized tests? How do you write a really compelling personal essay? How do you think about asking for letters of recommendation? It's somewhat similar to what you would look at the undergraduate admission process too. But we coach students through every single one of those pieces. And I will mention too, and we're really proud of this as well, we have a new program called the Graduate School Access Fund that just came online last year in the fall of 2020. Where we are able to give grants for students of color and low-income students who are pursuing that preparation for graduate school, and also some application support for covering the fees that applications do unfortunately require, and for many schools as well. So there's a robust amount of that, but it really becomes a collaborative process between faculty members. That a student will be working with that person to identify what kinds of colleges, or excuse me, what kinds of universities, who are the faculty members doing great work in there, and how can we make those connections with you? and then our team that can really help on the thought process of how to apply, when to apply, how do we make sure you really demonstrate that you're a strong applicant, and then to evaluate offers when they come through.
So one of the things that I often do with our ambassadors who are our mentors is ask them why they went to the school that they had graduated from. And when I'm talking to graduates of Colgate, it's rare that I get an answer relative to why they decided to go to Colgate, and more along the lines of, man, I'm glad I went to Colgate. And when they are responding from that vein, it's because of the alumni effort. They said, it's somewhat nuanced, but they say they're rabidly loyal to Colgate. Not in a bad way,
Right.
not like an Eagles fan throwing a snowball at Santa, but so yeah, I'd love to hear from both of you, your own experiences to the alumni engagement, and why many of the graduates from Colgate that I talk with focus more on the alumni network than why they initially decided to go to Colgate.
Yeah, Gary, as an alum, do you want to start with that? And then I'm happy to wrap after you.
Oh, I'll be happy to, Teresa, because I know you get to hear the stories every day. I still get to hear them, but not with the same level of frequency that you do. But it is almost staggering, the loyalty of the Colgate Alumni Network. Quite literally this afternoon, I had a student in my office who was telling me about the internship that she had over the summer, that an alum provided to her, because she found out about this alum and his occupation, and it was in an area of interest to her. She wrote to him, and the next thing she knows, she had an in-person internship with that particular alum. It really, you hear those stories all the time, and they never get old. There are people who are also involved in recruiting for permanent jobs that are really with very attractive, well-known companies. Perhaps Teresa could go into more detail with that. But there again, they always talk about how they got their foot in the door with that particular organization because of the entree provided by a Colgate alum. So it's a joy to be around a place where I've heard even students say, I can't wait to be in a position where I'll be able to give back to a student who wants to be doing what I'm going to be doing, because I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm going to be doing if it weren't for the help of the Colgate alum.
Yeah, Gary, I think that's exactly right. Jim, I think there's something unique about Colgate, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, and maybe it's not just Colgate, but we are, we're in upstate New York. We have a wonderful residential campus up here, but there's a solidarity because this is a rigorous experience. We are going to work you really hard because we know that you're capable, and because we know that we're going to get a lot out of you, and most importantly, you're going to get a lot out of yourself. And I think when you find yourself in the type of environment where you're really being pushed by your peers and your faculty, and there's a ton of support, but there's a high expectation for excellence, I think that you get a different kind of experience. And we have some snow up here, we have some hills up here. So I think when you kind of run through the mud with people and you have a moment to have that solidarity, to have that camaraderie, there's a sense of ownership and belonging there that exists. And it's a really wonderful identity. And I think a lot of our students, by the nature of how this place has evolved and how invested our alumni in, and how they show up and they show up and they show up, literally physically show up here in ways that you would never expect, but are so common. It becomes a community and it becomes a family. And I think that's something that our students appreciate, because it's a moment of being understood. I think that moment of connection and the idea that you are paying it forward and you're paying it backwards, it goes both ways. is really important. And I think our alumni, they appreciate what this education has been able to do for them and what they've been able to do with it too. So it's a really nice momentum. Momentum breeds momentum. And I think that's an important moment. But there's definitely an identity being a Colgate person. And I love wearing my Colgate gear. Anytime I travel, I do. And it is extraordinarily rare that I'm not in a major metro airport that somebody slows me down and says, I'm a Colgate alum, or my mom was, or my business partner was, or my roommate was, or whomever. And it's nice to see Colgate out there. So, so it's a lot of fun, and we love it. But it's a family. It's most definitely a family, and I think that's why we thrive and why we take care of ourselves as best as we do.
Outstanding. Hey, Nick, good to see you. Thanks for dropping that question in the chat. Gary, did you see Nick's question in the chat room?
There we go. Do you guys evaluate transcripts before or after acceptance? We evaluate transcripts as a part of the application, so it's before acceptance. And we look at the application, we look at the kinds of classes that you've taken, but when we are evaluating a veteran, we fully understand that we need to place that transcript in context. And maybe your high school record was not what we would normally be looking for in a high school graduate who graduated last May. Maybe you graduated from high school 5, 6, 10 years ago. We're going to take that in consideration and evaluate your transcript in conjunction with any work that you have done at the college or university level since then, and in conjunction with the level of work and the performance evaluations that you have from your superior officers while you've been in the armed forces.
Thank you, Gary. So for those of you that are online this evening, those of you that will be watching this as one of our recorded resources, Teresa told you what questions to ask as you're researching schools. So I'm sure she would love to be put on the spot and have you ask those questions that she suggested you ask. And Gary is our point of contact for our VetLink program, and not only can ask questions for you regarding the missions, college fit, what Colgate has to offer, but he's also the vice president for financial aid, and they've got some great resources for veterans that go above and beyond the GI Bill. So make sure you reach out to both. I guarantee you they're going to respond. So take advantage of having these direct contacts. Teresa, wonderful. Really appreciate your time and effort. Gary, great to see you. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you all for your service.